No, you can't control me, baby. You need a real one in your life. Them bitches ain't gonna give it to you, right? I'd rather be your B-I-T-C-H.
Hi, I'm Zaria.
And I'm Maika.
And this is Calming the Chaos. Welcome back to episode 5.
Woo!
Yes. We are so glad that you guys came back again for another week of our shenanigans.
We hope you enjoyed our Pride commemoration in our last episode, and I hope that you will DM us some of your stories, not necessarily Pride stories, but any type of stories.
You can DM us in our bitchin' box at calmingthechaos_22. Again, that is calmingthechaos_22, and we hope to hear from you guys soon. So, Maika, how was religion brought up in your family?
Well, for me, my family's Christian, and I was forced to go to church a lot as a kid, and I thought I was Christian, and I lived the Christian way. My grandmother, before she passed, she taught me how to pray, and, pray before I eat, pray before I go to bed, if I do something, pray for forgiveness, go to church. Like, she was that kind of woman. And I do, appreciate that now. But as a kid, I hated it. I was agnostic, which means you don't necessarily believe in a higher being, but you don't necessarily believe that there isn't a higher being as well. So, because I was forced to go to church all the time and being agnostic, I tend to not listen to what was being said at church, especially whenever I went to church. I really just did not enjoy the atmosphere. It was honestly, to me, a bunch of people who sin all week and then come to church on Sunday to get their souls cleansed so that they could sin some more.
Preach. Preach, Ed. You're singing to the choir.
That's how I viewed church. Just people, a bunch of sinners coming to church just to purify all the sins that they did so they could sin some more. And I just knew I didn't want to be that way. If I'm gonna love God, then I'm gonna follow by that, and I'm not gonna pray constantly every weekend for forgiveness. Why can't I just not be so sinful that? And if I do sin, know that I sinned on purpose. I did whatever it was that I did and take responsibility for it. I'm not going to sit there and ask God for forgiveness. Maybe I shouldn't be forgiven. This is on me.
Right. And where do we draw the line at what is forgivable and what isn't forgivable?
Well, honestly, it's not up to us. We're not the judge.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
We can't be the judge of people.
And we're also not going to be there on Judgment Day, faced with whatever consequences that we did on this earth.
Mm-hmm. The only church-like thing that I did was this summer program. I don't remember what year I did it, but it opened my eyes to a lot. I ended up really liking it, and I was like, maybe I can do this more often. Whatever we did here, it was a lot of different arts and crafts. And I love me some arts and crafts, and it was sing-alongs, but it was kind of for the side that you do for kids, whenever it doesn't get into the heavy stuff, the more lighthearted stuff.
Right.
I was I like this, I feel like that's what I should have started out with, rather than the heavy stuff and thrown into the den.
Yeah, I know for me, I also went to a summer church thing, and it was pretty fun for me too. We did all the same things that you did. Mm-hmm. We would do some dinners or whatever, play games or whatever. It was really fun, and we did a lot of sing-alongs, which I loved. I just loved singing at that time. But it was so weird though, because even after I stopped going to that church summer camp thing, I was on the face of their brochure for years after that.
Oh my god.
And I didn't know until they had already been doing it for at least a couple years.
They kept you on for years?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Like it's so funny to me now that I look back, and like I literally just unlocked a memory that I completely forgot about, but I can't believe they just had my face on a church brochure for years.
Without your knowledge.
Yes, without my knowledge.
That's wild.
Yes.
That is so wild.
And I know, like, I grew up in the church, like I said, on the last podcast, where like my grandma was the mother and the founder of the church, and seeing how that church was ran, and knowing how my grandma also like treated me and other people around her and would talk about people is what really solidified the reason of me not wanting to continue to go to church. Because I witnessed so many preachers, pastors, or Christian people, which I am Christian. Well, I don't identify with that anymore, but at the time I was Christian. Um, I seen so many people like just bend and twist the word of God to make their life seem so perfect, but to make you feel horrible sitting in the pews.
Yep. That's it right there.
And I just seen like so many people in my home church just run so many other good people away because of how nasty they were, but they're supposed to be living for God.
And that's not the holy thing to do.
Literally. Like me and my grandma would get in fights and she would be talking to me like any kind of way. And I'd be like, what would the pastor say about this? What would God say about this? Because she
What
was.
would Jesus do?
Yes, literally. Because she just wasn't as holy as like she made everybody out to like think of her.
Yeah.
And that to me is like a hard pill to swallow because you want me to go to church, you want me to follow after you want me to do all these things, but you're also not the best example for me either.
And it's such a turn away for your future. And when it comes to religion, it makes you not want to believe because of what you're seeing. I'm the type of person where, like, if I see it, I'll believe it. If I see it with my own eyes, I'll believe it. And the way that I grew up, kind of similar to how you grew up, just seeing all the nastiness of the church and seeing people just asking forgiveness and instead of worshiping. So that's how I saw it, and that's how I perceived going to church. That's how I perceived that religion of being a Christian. And over time, as I grew up, of course, my perception of it changed because I made my own decisions of how it
Should be, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know, like, for me, it was always an argument if I didn't want to go to church that day.
Yeah.
And my grandma, she went to Georgia for like 6 months during my junior year, just for the winter, and then she came back. But I was living with my aunt, and I went to church with her, which kind of shed like a whole new light for me because her church had way more youth than the church that I had. Um, they actually did other things than just like singing in the church because I was in the church choir because I was kind of forced to do that also.
Yeah.
But when I went to my aunt's church, I had like a say, kind of, and
You had a little bit more religious freedom there.
And that made me actually gravitate towards like praise dancing, and I really enjoyed praise dancing. Like it was my favorite thing about going to church is to be able to get up there and do praise dances. So that was like my favorite thing, and I went to church and did my thing, did praise dancing, and I was starting to like it, but something still just wasn't sitting right with my soul with how everything was like playing out.
It was like a dark cloud just hanging
Yes.
over you, waiting.
Yeah, and I just couldn't continue with it. So after my grandma came back and I moved back in with my grandmother, I kind of just stopped going to church altogether after my junior year. My grandma was angry. But like at that point, you can't really force someone who is pretty much about to be 18.
Yeah.
So
it's like
like
they've made up their mind.
mhm.
You know, they've experienced and now they know what they want to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how I was. But I was a little younger. When I was able to stay home by myself instead of going to church with everyone else, that's what I did.
Right.
I was like, I do not want to go. I refuse to go. And Thank God eventually they stopped forcing me to go. I think they realized how I just really did not want to go.
Right.
And they were like, fine. Like, I give up.
Well, let's also talk about white churches versus black churches too, because why do white churches only go to church for an hour, but we got to go to church for like 6?
Yeah. That's because I feel like black churches, they be singing, they be dancing, hallelujah, praise Jesus.
And the pastor always be like, I'm not going to hold you long, and then it's 3 hours later.
But one thing when I got older and I was still agnostic, I didn't find God until about 3 years ago. And I started going to a church, and ugh, they had a live band. When I first went in, they were singing songs, and they actually had the lyrics on the screen so you can read it, hear it, and like sing along. And it was repetitive, so you can, come in. And the way they made the music is so like it builds.
Mm.
And I was bawling. I the first time going to church in a very long time, and I was going through something really heavy on my soul. And I went to that church and I was bawling. I needed like I was going through it so bad. I had the pastor pray over me
Mm.
because I felt like I honestly needed it, and it was so cleansing. So, and it was a
There's
non.
nothing like a church cry. Like nothing like a church cry. You a boohoo cry and not even
Oh,
feel ashamed in front of all those people.
because they all understand the power of God
Yes.
and the power that He holds over us. And it took me so long to get to that point. And I was so one way minded for the longest time because of my experiences when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I refused to go to church for the longest time. It took me until like halfway through college, bro, to finally decide to go. It took me when I was at my lowest
Mm-hmm.
to finally decide to go, and it broke me. Well, healed me, but I was broken when I got there, and it healed me piece by piece, and I'm very grateful for that place. And it's like it got me where I am now. I have a relationship with God now, and I try not to ever pray for anything. I just whatever I'm going through, I still say thank you because I'm still here. I'm still doing my thing. And sometimes I'm like, God, I'm going through it. But, I still love you. Like,
See,
just to
well,
have that relationship and just talk to him.
right. Like my experience is still a little bit different. Like I
Hmm.
don't really have much of a relationship with God.
Yeah.
Like I it's muscle memory, some of the scriptures and stuff, because you were
Hmm.
forced for so long. And like I still think of God in like a certain way that's not terribly bad.
Yeah.
But for me, it just doesn't suit me to go to church when I just don't know a lot of things. Like there's still things I don't know. There's
Hmm.
still things or laws that are being made based off the Old Testament
Yeah.
that's like kind of clouding my thought of like, okay, do I want to go to church? Do I not want to go to church? Do I even want to just believe in God? Do I not want to believe in God? And
Hmm.
I feel like I'm kind of struggling, but I've also had tremendous like grief
And
in my
loss.
grief and loss in my life, to the point it's like if he can do all of that to one specific person, does he really love me?
Yeah.
And that's like my thought on it. And people will always say like, oh, he doesn't give like his hardest things to the weak or whatever, and like it
He
means,
doesn't give you more than you can't handle.
yeah, but like I'm tired of handling it. You can chill
Hmm.
on that though. Like I'm done. I'm tired of handling it, and I just feel like because I feel like I put on such a brave face and I have this strong exterior, I just feel like all this stuff just keeps getting piled on me, and it's like when is it going to be enough?
It's mentally draining on your body, on your mind, and on your soul.
Yeah.
I get that. I understand that. Yeah.
So it's just very like hard for me. I don't know. I would hope to get back to that one day. Like, maybe not go as much as like I was forced to before,
Yeah.
but to at least ease my way back into it. Like, I still love some gospel songs. Like, I still have some of them on my playlist. Like, we have a Bible in my home. We are still very like close with him in like a distant type of way.
Yeah.
Like, he's still a part of me, but I don't want him right next to me right
Yeah.
now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And when I first was trying to build my relationship with God through prayer, I actually wasn't praying to God at first. I chose to pray to my grandfather and my grandmother that had died. I chose to pray to them and just ask them to watch over me in this process. And then eventually I was like, okay, I would like to speak to your manager. I would like to speak
That's a
to
Karen move.
I would like to speak to your boss or your protector. And I was like, okay, now I can pray to God. And I don't always say in Jesus' name. I just say in God's name. Because I also kind of feel like there's more than one God, but I know the Christian way is that there is just one God. So I feel like that's also where religion gets a little blurry for me personally because I believe that there are multiple gods. So when I pray to God. Like like plural but like you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just
Hmm.
I pray to God and it's
And
just
whoever it reaches, it reaches.
exactly. I just pray to that higher being that's watching over me
Hmm.
and I'm not going to label them.
Hmm.
But I feel like this whole religion spiel that I went through as a kid is something I would not want to pass on to my children. I would not want to force religion down their throats.
Yeah, me neither. And I also feel going off of passing things down to your kids, like, I don't think I would just spank my kids for like any and everything
Mhm.
that happens because they're kids. They're gonna make mistakes. It's not gonna always be their fault. And I just feel like as babies, when you're learning, you shouldn't just instantly,
Hit.
yeah, hit them
Yeah.
because they don't know what they're doing wrong.
Mhm. I saw the method that my stepmom used and I thought it was like genius
Hmm.
at the time. So whenever my sister would go to touch something, she was like a toddler baby. Whenever she would go to touch something she wasn't supposed to, she would say no toque,
Hmm.
like don't touch it.
Hmm.
That because she's Hispanic, so no toque, don't touch it. And if she would go to touch it, it's like no. You would tell them no. She goes to touch it again, you slap the hand,
Hmm.
not hit them, but you tap their hand so that they get like a pain response
Hmm.
to touching it. So if they go to touch it again, they'll think of that pain and be like, I don't want to touch it now because I'll feel that pain on my hand.
Right.
So it's kind of like she did more of like a reverse psychology thing with my sister. And I was like, that is brilliant
Hmm.
because that's teaching your child not to touch stuff they're not supposed to without like immediately getting the chancla or like getting a shoe and like beating your
Right.
child for no reason, honestly.
Yeah, and I feel like that also goes like hand in hand with like just letting your kids feel what they need to feel and process their emotions as human beings when they're growing in their most vulnerable stages.
Mm-hmm. Because if you teach them this abuse, they'll pass on that abuse
Yes.
for when they get older, and how they're gonna think that you should treat people. And not only that, but like they'll get older and feel like that's how they should treat their children,
Yes.
and then the cycle continues. We need to break the cycle while we're mindful
Hmm.
of what the cycle is.
Right. And this goes without saying too that you can't parent every kid differently. You might have 10 kids, but all 10 kids are not going to be at the same wavelength of like mental stability to
Mm-hmm.
understand certain things. So like
Mm-hmm.
you might have to be a little bit harder on the 10th child than the first child or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but you should,
Some children are hard headed, and
yeah,
they really just
they
they don't
kids.
they just don't process things as quick or easily as you would hope. And it does take a little bit more effort, but it doesn't mean beat them harder.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean beat them at all.
Mm-hmm.
It just means it's going to take more time. You have to have the patience to deal with your child.
Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about, like, when people say, oh, you should gentle parent your kids?
I mean, gentle parenting, I feel, could be effective if your child is very subjective.
Okay.
Like, if they will literally listen to everything you say, you can do gentle parenting. But I feel personally, when I have kids, if I tell them not to do something, I'm going to try that method that my stepmom did. Like, I swear that stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, with my little brother, he was a very hard headed child. Like, I had to try a little bit harder to, like, I had to bribe him.
Yeah.
I tried to do, like, the method where if you're good, I will reward your good behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If you're bad, I'm gonna discipline by, like, taking something away. Like, you can't have your favorite blanket.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I give you your favorite blanket if you're, you know, acting up and being bad? You
Right.
can get it back when you fix your attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you just have to learn how to discipline and how to reward the good behavior. And but also don't treat them to be spoiled if they're always being good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe lessen the
Work.
reward.
Yeah. Work
Make
for
them
it.
work for it. That'll teach them a work ethic.
Well, that goes with saying also, like, you have to learn your kids' love language. Like, if your
Yeah,
kids' love language is gifts, okay, then maybe you go buy them, like, a sucker or something or whatever. But if their love language is, like, praise, then you have to be mindful of that also. Because, like, I know for me, I think my love language, I guess, would be, like, touch and praise.
mhm.
Like, I am a hugger or whatever, but that's really as far as it goes with, like, touching or whatever. I just like hugs and, like, kind of like a pat on the back or whatever, like, you're doing a
Mhm.
great job. Because I also, as an adult, I learned what my love language was, because as a kid I didn't know, because I never even got a
Mhm.
reward or a praise for
Yeah.
anything that I did that was good. It was always we're focusing on the negative, negative, negative. And that's one thing I won't do. Like, if they're doing 1,000 things right, why are you gonna focus on that one negative thing and make them feel like shit for it?
That's kind of how it was for me, I think, cuz I was a very smart kid. I was the kid that, like, the school was like, we're going to have to skip her a grade
Mhm.
because she's so smart.
Mhm.
And then I moved and then they wouldn't let me. But with the school that I went to, they were like, "Oh, we need to skip her grade," because I was very good at math. I was very good at English. Like, I was good at almost everything. School was my strong suit.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I was praised for that a lot of the time, but if I did anything else that wasn't, like, good,
Mhm.
I felt like they focused on that
Mhm.
more, especially my dad. It's like I did everything in my power to like make that man proud of me. And then I do one thing, like with one of my siblings, if they did something wrong and I knew about it, I was a disappointment.
Mhm.
And I'm like, how am I the disappointment? I did my best. I did my big sister thing and I sat down and spoke to them. And because you didn't do it first, like, I'm the disappointment because I didn't say anything. I still have a bond with my sister or with my brother, and that's between me and them.
Right.
So, because I decide to do things a certain way, I'm the disappointment. It's more of like whatever I do in person. But
Mhm.
in school, it's always like, oh, that's good, that's good. Or if I do bad, they're like, you can do better. Like, I know you can do, what are you doing? And then it's like, the judgment sets in.
Well, I definitely feel you on the judgment side, because I, for one, have a learning disability. It's definitely with math, 100%. Because when I, even basic math to this day, when somebody gives me an equation, my mind just, like, is like, la di da di da. Like, it does not want to do the math work, okay? I don't know why, but it just shuts off completely.
Oh my
And
god.
then with English or reading or whatever, I guess it's a comprehension. Like, I could read something 100 times and still not fully grasp the concept of it
Mm-hmm.
or not even know what the fuck I just read.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like my biggest thing, like when they had like the ELA test, that's really when I first started noticing that, because you had to sit there and read many stories for hours.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, by the fifth one, I'm not gonna know what the fuck I'm reading anymore.
It's gonna all sound like gibberish.
It literally. So that was like my thing on it, but my family never really gave me the grace when it came to me like having a learning disability and me trying my best, but my best obviously like wasn't good enough because I wasn't that great at school.
Mm-hmm.
I was like stronger in like half of my classes and then like the other half I was very weak in. But I just wish they gave me a little bit more grace, especially when I would tell them like I'm struggling. I can't learn from this teacher because they're not teaching in a way that I'm understanding.
Mm-hmm.
They just think, "Oh, the teacher's right and you're the problem."
Mm-hmm.
And that was like my biggest thing for me because I felt always defeated and torn down because for one, I'm not smart enough. I'm in these special needs help classes. And for three, I feel like everybody else is just like thriving and I'm not, and I'm just not understanding certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But it also doesn't help that like I'm feeling that way in school, beating myself up about it, but then I get home and it's the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in the school system, they need to understand that not all kids learn the same way.
Yeah.
And then when you get home, your parents need to actually help you and sit down with you. I feel like I'm very grateful because my nana and my mom, they would actually sit down with me and we would do little like math contests.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I got it right, like we would just cheer, like it was just fun. And they made learning fun for me. And I feel like I do appreciate that. And that's what people should have. Like when they come home, they should have someone, maybe not even a parent, maybe like a grandparent or aunt
Mm-hmm.
or something. They should have someone there to help bounce ideas off of, or even just sit down and have that support of
Right.
helping you. Like if they see you struggling, they can jump in and help you. But when you're doing it all by yourself and you feel so alone, you feel like nobody's helping you, and you know that there's something wrong with you, and your parents won't believe you
Mm-hmm.
because they personally don't believe in a learning disability. They're like, oh, not my kid.
They don't believe in a learning disability, but my grandma had to come up to the school year since like elementary school once a year to go over my learning disability in the beginning of the school year. She was there for all those meetings up until like I graduated. It was like, oh, whatever. And like just a side note, she didn't even go to my graduation, and she's the one that raised me after my parents died. She didn't go to my
Wow.
brother's graduation either, and he was the first one to graduate out of all my siblings.
It's the parents' job to show up and be there for your kids. I don't know. I am grateful that, my family showed up to my graduation. They came all the way up from like hours away just to come to my graduation, and I appreciate that.
My
But then they
aunt,
left right after.
well, yeah, my aunt came from Georgia and gave
Wow.
me like mad money too, not to mention,
Hmm.
and like went to my graduation and stuff and stayed for a few days. And she also like threw my Sweet 16 party, like paid for everything all the way from Georgia.
I never got a sweet 16.
She is the one that came to me about the Sweet 16. I didn't even come to anybody because I didn't really, I thought I would just, make my own plans for a party, but she wanted to like plan it for me. So, hey, I'm not going to stop you if you want to plan something for me. It was nice and stuff.
I literally planned my entire sweet 16 overnight and then I never got it.
Mm.
I'm a planner when it comes to like events and stuff. I
Yeah.
love to I swear.
Hmm.
I love to plan things. And I just never got it. We
Right.
couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
So,
She was in the military and stuff, and she like retired through them and still like works for them kind of like
mm,
in the office setting for the
yeah.
military or whatever. So like she makes pretty decent money, and so does her husband. So she could afford to do that, and I don't think any of her kids had a Sweet 16. So I think that's why she wanted to give it to me, and she knew like obviously my situation, her sister died and stuff.
Yeah,
So
like you would enjoy it more and appreciate it more.
yeah, so I was really appreciative of that.
Going back to kind of breaking the cycle, I feel like I really did that for myself when comparing myself to my parents. I feel like I did my best trying to just do better than they did through their life. They did something or stopped doing something. I tried to, make sure I continued and did what I felt was best or what I think they should have done. And so if I think they should have done it, then I'll do it so that when I have kids, they can look at me and try to do better than me. And it's like I try to do good so I can be a good influence for when I have kids so that they can try to do better and try to carry that energy forward.
Yeah, I definitely can agree with that because I tried to be better not only than like my parents but my whole family because I was constantly being compared to my family because like my family wasn't the greatest and like we have people like in and out of jail and running the streets and not graduating high school, not even stepping foot in a college.
Yeah.
And like granted I didn't finish college, but at least I went pretty much for like a full semester. Uh actually a full year because I did tell you that because I
Yeah.
did end up going back after that one semester. So like I did try it.
You
It
put the
just
work in.
yeah, it just wasn't for me. But I also like have the things that I have, even though I didn't do the traditional route as of going to college, but I still have the things that I have because I put in the work. And I
Yeah.
can't say that for most of my family.
Yeah. We would love to hear how you guys plan or have broken the cycle, and you can tell us in the comments below, or you can DM it to us at calmingthechaos_22 on Instagram. That is calmingthechaos_22. We also have a TikTok, so you could always direct message us on there as well.
Which is calmingthechaos_22. Again, that's calmingthechaos_22. And we can't wait to see you next week. I'm Zario.
And I'm Maika.
And this is
Calming the Chaos.
I'd rather be a bee.